you. And this is a weekly STEP meeting. Our format is as follows. A speaker is asked to talk for 25 to 30 minutes on the STEP of that week, followed by discussion or questions until 7 p.m. You can find these weekly meetings on our YouTube page, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. And don't forget to like it. Smash the button. And that brings us to the speaker portion of the meeting on May 3rd, 2021 in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, at the Monday night 6 p.m. Stay Alive Literature and Step Group at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Tonight's speaker is Alan, and he will be sharing his experience on Step 5. So please help me welcome Alan.
What's up, everybody? My name's Alan. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is April 10th, 2009. My home group is actually the Sunday Night Men's down at Glenside. I guess I'll kind of qualify myself, and we'll kind of build up to Step 5 on that as we're getting into it. I spent a lot of years out there. Jails, institutions, and near-death experiences like the rest of us out there, and I was a chronic relapser. I was that guy coming in here, like, that you always saw in the back room, like, oh, here he comes again, like shaking your head, but I finally threw in the towel and everything started making sense. I was actually, while I was out there, boomeranging in and out and in and out and in and out, I was forced into 2 years of Monday nights for Chris Brennan. Even though I didn't want to be there, I was forced to be there for 2 nights living in Newfound Freedom and stuff like that. And I'll tell you what, when I finally threw in the towel, everything really started to click for me. I thought the fact that I was an alcoholic, I thought that it was a death sentence. The thought of never being able to drink or anything else ever again I thought it was a complete death sentence. Today, it is the thing that I am most grateful for in my life. I call it, I've been given the gift of alcoholism. I wouldn't have the perception of the world, having not been through what I've been through, working the 12 steps of my life on the perception of the world that I have today. All these things that I did wrong, it all came down to, I just didn't surrender. I finally, when I came down to Step 1, when I finally admitted I was powerless over alcohol, my life had become unmanageable. I tried for years to prove I wanted anything but to be an alcoholic. I didn't want to be it, so I tried for years. Even like, I can't have just one. So sometimes I'd go out, I'd have just one, and I'd be like, I did it. But guess what? I couldn't wait. From that moment on, I couldn't wait to do it again. Whether it was a week, the next time, or whatever it is, the end result just kept being the same. And I was also wired differently. And I thought that everybody else was normal at the time, thinking I used to be a bartender, and I'd see people, they'd come in, I'd watch them order a beer or 2 or whatever, that's fine, or 3, and then all of a sudden they'd order all this pasta or a big hoagie and a sandwich, and I'd be thinking what are they doing? I couldn't understand why they were doing that. I was like, what are you doing? You're completely killing the whole effect of everything that's going on here. I couldn't understand why people were doing that. Come to find out that I was the one that was different. Alcohol worked as a 100% stimulant for me. And also, once I put one in, I also couldn't control the phenomenon of craving kicked in. I also had no control. All bets were off. And I just never wanted the party to end. That was it, And when I finally threw in the towel, and I finally, admitted that I was powerless over it. I was actually sitting in my parents' basement, I was 34 years old, and my, all kinds of things going on like that. My normal thought is, how am I going to hustle my way out of this one? And, finally it came over me. I was like, you know what? I'm not. I was like, God help me. I was always around AA. Finally, I knew I needed to be in it. I just need to learn how to stay sober first. Because every time I try to come back in, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to stay sober, but I need to get some money. I need to get a girlfriend. I'm going to stay sober. And it never worked. When I finally made this number 1, that's when everything else started to fall into place. So then, coming into, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. So I hit that point, and with that, the main thing for me was I saw it working in other people. Like, the proof was in the pudding. And and to me, it's night and day. I saw people that had 25 years of sobriety, or 30 years, 40 years of sobriety, angrier than all heck, sitting in the back of a meeting. And there was no question. I didn't have to ask them anything about their higher power or anything like that, because they wanted nothing to do with it. But I saw people that were happy, joyous, and free. These are the people that were working the 12 steps in their life. They had a glow about them. It's night and day, and I could see it, and I saw it working in them. And I knew if it worked for them, that it had to be working for me, because I knew 100% that my way definitely was not working. So I became willing to, whatever it was going to be, I was ready to do it. And I put my faith in that for that. So, and then I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to care of God as we understood Him. So this is just a decision, basically, to go through with the rest of the steps. And with that, for me, I need to make that decision every day. Every day I am on my knees, doing a third step prayer. God, I offer myself to Thee to build with me. Relieve me, to build with me and do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, so I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, so that I may better do Thy will. Of Thy power, Thy love, Thy way of life, may I do Thy will always. So every morning I'm doing the third step prayer on my knees, saying that as a reminder that I'm not in control of this bus. I'm not driving this ship. Every morning I need that reminder of, because all this damage that I caused was a complete self-will run riot out there. So, and being a chronic relapse, it was actually a gift, again, because I know the first thing out the window on a relapse is the spirituality. Okay, yeah, I'm cool. I stopped praying. Now I don't need the meetings. Now I don't need to do all these things. So that's where the battle is. I'm not going to lose that battle each morning. I'm going to be on my knees asking my higher power, which I rely on heavily, which is also what we're going to get into here, which is the purpose of the steps, is to gain a connection with your higher power, and that's what this is all about. And that's what I'm making sure each morning that I'm doing that. So 1, 2, and 3, they're just decisions. So then, for many years I was out there getting afraid of the 4th step and all this other stuff like that. I became willing to do whatever it took. So when it came time, when I finally threw in the towel, we came in there. We talked about my searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, my fear, resentments, my sex conduct, my harm done to others. So we lined them all up, and I was told, we going from left to right, putting down there, doing my 4-step, and leaving nothing on the table, with that. So, that brings us to the 5th step here, and with the 5th step, it's such an important step here, and there's a lot of, and I'm going to be referencing the book as we kind of go through this a little bit, but there's some huge things that it talks about in the book here, and one of the biggest things that it talks about here is that if we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. So there was many, I did the steps actually, I had the steps rammed down my throat for many years. It never worked because I didn't surrender. It didn't matter what you were bringing me. I just didn't surrender, whatever it was. But there was many times where I did 4th and 5th step or whatever. It was kind of just winging it, going through it. This very well. There was a lot of things that I wasn't doing, but this is definitely one of them that was included in that. Is like I was definitely leaving some things out here on my 5th step. Admitted to God, ourselves, and another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. Now we're going to talk about, and when it talks about in the book, we talks about our defects, our wrongs, our shortcomings. These are all the same things. In order for us, the goal, the purpose of the 12 steps is for us to gain a connection with our higher power to fix the problem of what it is. And there's obstacles that are in the way, called the Sunday, blocking us from the sunlight of the Spirit, which is our higher power, which is God, and that's where we start to learn exactly what this is. So in the 5th step, we need to find somebody else to do that with. It's important to find. For me, I didn't want it to be, I was told, I didn't want it to be just like a confession type of a deal. I got someone who I trusted in AA that was working the program, that understood about the defects of character. I understood. He told me about other things. I chose a person that was going to be able to point out the things that I couldn't see. And it was very important that we did that, and when I finally became ready to do that, we went out to went out to a nice, peaceful place. We went out to a park, sat on a bench, and we just sat down. We sat down for hours and just started. We started talking. We started going through some things. Some of the things that we started to go over. What I started to see was. I started to list the things that what they were, how it affected, and my part in those things. And what I started to see, the big thing that I started to learn was it had absolutely nothing to do with these other people, and it had everything to do with me. Some of the most powerful things on my fifth step and later were people that I did absolutely nothing to them, and they did it all to me. Just to give one example, my first love, my girlfriend, whatever, and my best friend, I found out that he was like sleeping with my first love and everything. Totally crushed me. I went off the deep end, everything else, all this for years. When I thought of this guy, I mean, I just saw red. And when it came down to resentments and these other things, and I guess it's important to talk about. The resentments are huge. Resentments are the number one offender. We as alcoholics do not have the luxury of being resentful. Resent means to revisit, quote unquote, normal people. These things happen. They just go on about normal life. It's not with us. We're just constantly filling up, playing it over and over and again. And that's just one, let alone 10, 20, hundreds of them there. We don't have the luxury of being resentful. So I was explaining, this is just one example of one of the things that I had on my fist. I was like, well, look, I didn't do nothing to him. I did absolutely nothing to him. He was sleeping with my girlfriend, my first love, all this stuff like that. I did nothing. He's like, you know what? He's like, let me ask you a question. He's like, have you ever done anything like that out in your gallivanting out there? And I was like, yeah, I have. As a matter of fact, yes, I have. And he's like, you've been hating him for all these years, and you had absolutely no right to do that. Absolutely no right to do that. And that was one of the biggest, most powerful. That's where it really started. The epiphanies. I had some amazing things happen to me in the steps. Step 1, when I finally threw in the towel. Step 5 here, started having a spiritual experience here. In step 5, and then also later on in step 9, where I finally started making those amends to really launch me into the fourth dimension on that. But these are the types of things that happen, and it talks about a lot of good stuff. It talks about we are more than most people. The alcoholic leads a double life. He is very much the actor. The outer world presents his stage actor. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. So, and this is important because when we're going through these things, it's important that for many years I was portraying these things, portraying to be something that I wasn't. I was nothing but a scared little boy. I was a fearful, feared up little boy, and that's all I was. And I didn't want anybody to know that. So getting into this fifth step was the first. It was the first, really, actually, other than when I finally threw in the towel, surrender in the step 1 is where the fifth step was where I really started to get lightened. I started lightening the load. I started trusting in these fears of these things, being willing to come. And when I did it with my sponsor, after I was done with it, he said to me, hey, listen, he said, now, is there anything that you're holding back that after we got through them, is there anything you're holding back? Are you sure that you were holding back at all that you really didn't bring up there? And I was like, you know what? I was like, yeah, there is. And this is one of the things that I was hanging on to there, and you know what? I let it out. It was like this big deal. I was out there doing a lot of bad stuff, and down in North Philly and all this stuff like that. And I finally, I came clean on it. I brought it to light on that, and thank God that I did, because that was the first time where I let go of the fear. I let it go, and I started to learn that I didn't have to deal with it, especially when it comes to the fears of these things. The solution to the fear is letting my higher power handle it and direct my attention to what it would have me be. It talks about here, in the fear prayer. Where I'm always looking at, please help remove my fears and direct my attention to what you would have me be. And same thing also when it gets into the sex. when you're getting into in here, we have we're reverting right back to sum it up about sex. We earnestly pray. And I want to talk, before I get into that, there's very important where it says we earnestly pray. And there's a lot of things here in the book where it doesn't say then we pray. It says then we humbly, then from the bottom of our heart, then we earnestly. And this was a huge connector for me, especially on my prayers in the morning. That's the first thing I think of. I don't just pray. I was given the gift of desperation, and when I started really from the bottom of my heart, earnestly, humbly, all these things, really relying on me, because I went through the motions for years and it wasn't working. But when I really started earnestly asking for help from God and really believing that it was happening, that's really where all the magic started to happen for me. I hear it all the time, like, oh yeah, I do that, it doesn't work for me. And I kind of know that, I can see that they're kind of just going through the motions in this, I can't keep it unless I give it away. I do. I sponsor lots of guys. I've learned more about myself by taking other people through the steps as well through this whole process also. But to sum it up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity and for the strength to do the right thing. If sex is troublesome, we throw ourselves even harder into helping others. So say, when in doubt, we throw ourselves harder into helping others. We have a disease of selfish, self-seeking, self-centered. In all of these things that, as I'm going through the fifth step, I'm looking at it, and my sponsor was just pointing out, he's like, what was this? I was like, well, this might be right. He's like, this is just straight up, this is dishonest. This is dishonesty. This is this. And it talks about dishonest is huge. I think a lot of us were big time, flat out, just dishonest. And it talks about it, a lot of people even reverting back to like how it works. When people read how it works, I see sometimes, a lot of times at meetings, I see these people like whip right through it. They'll like whip right through it without saying it, where it's really how it works is huge, because it talks about, these people that they don't get it, they're not at fault. They are just simply incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. So the dishonest part is huge. And that's where it gets in right here. We must be entirely honest with somebody to expect to live a long, happy life in this world, and that's the honesty. That's really what it's about, and that's what. And really, that's also a gift. The fact that we know that and we're able to do that, and it talks about people of faith. And I wanted to read this one. Where's that? Well, it talks about as far as relying on God and as far as a higher power being a weakness. That's actually a sign of strength, is what it is. Real men do a thorough and honest fourth and fifth step. That's where the real power is, as far as that goes as well. So, now, should we realize that we are engaged upon a life and death errand? Most people approach this in a way that are glad to help. And when it talks about this here, right here, it talks about it again. A life and death errand. Like, this fifth step is a huge deal. It needs to be taken extremely seriously. When it talks about here it being a life and death errand, I mean, there's certain things when I've been reading the book that really stick out to me. If you're telling me this is a life and death errand, I mean, this is a really big deal. In doing this thing and doing the fifth step the proper way of getting completely honest. And what this does, doing a fifth step, what this really starts to do is this starts the whole thing here. It's clearing our whole way and connecting us to our higher power. This is what it's all about. We start to get this freedom of everything once we start to when I left my first or my fifth step, when I did it the proper way and set home, I was on my way home, and it talks about going home and just taking an hour. This is one of the only times other than saying at once between 3 and 4. It says we go home and we take an hour to make sure that we did everything properly, and it's important that we do this. Because when I sat there and I did this fifth step with I laid everything out on the table to everything, I talked about everything. When I was going home to do that hour to take just to reflect on everything, I was like on cloud nine, and it just kept coming. It was one of the most amazing, lightning experiences that I've ever experienced before. Coming there, it talks about a lot of things that start to happen in here. So, returning home, we find a place where we can find quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we have done. We thank God from the bottom of our heart. Accentuation again there, that we know Him better. Taking this book down from the shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we have omitted anything, for we are building an ark through which we shall walk a free man at last. Is our work solid so far? Are there stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar out of stand? So it's important that we take that hour to reflect, to make sure that we were doing everything, properly. When I did my fifth step, thank God, when I finally threw in the towel. I became willing to do whatever they told me to do, whatever it took. So when it came to that, when I came down to this, I became willing to do that, and by doing it, it really started to rocket me into the fourth dimension, as far as that goes. Like I said, I'm really happy to be here. I'm glad, Ron. Thank you very much for asking me to come out, and that's all I got. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Alan. I'm going to open the meeting shortly, but please limit your sharing to 3 minutes, and don't forget to remove your mask. Please keep your shares related to the step. If you feel like drinking, or if you've had a drink today, please see me or speak to someone after the meeting. We ask that you please refrain from the use of profanity. We are in a church and on a spiritual journey. And with that, I'm going to open up the meeting.